Hi, my name is Matt, and the lighting is very scenic today. I was stuck in a basement for about 5 months, which is why I haven't made any new videos. I had to survive off of some wild things, but recently, thankfully, I was let out. But while I was there, I fortunately found a laptop that I could code on, and my coding knowledge has expanded beyond anything you can imagine. Which is why, when I left, I immediately knew what I was going to work on, and it would be the most challenging project of my life. So, Matt, how did you come to the conclusion that you had to make this one thing? The answer is simple. As I had a laptop there, I was working on a very important project, where I realized that there is something that I simply couldn't find anywhere whatsoever. My project required a very important particular type of bot, but no matter how many GitHub repositories I went into, I couldn't find one that really fit. So that is why I decided that I would make one of my own. The type of bot that I'm talking about here is an OCR, optical character recognition, a bot that is capable of taking text on an image and reading it letter for letter. Starting the project, the language that I picked was Python because that's the one that I know the best. But if you've ever used Python, or if you know anything about coding languages, you will know that Python is not a good pick for something like this. Something like an OCR requires the coding language that it is being coded in to be as fast as possible, otherwise the process will be incredibly slow.
And let this stay between us, but Python is a really slow language.
That hurdle out of the way, code doesn't have eyes. So the first step for the OCR, since it needs to be able to read, is to give it eyes. I don't have any victims, I haven't ever killed anyone, and I only have 2 eyes, and I want to keep both of them. Therefore, I needed to code a way for it to see something. Now, way that the code works on this first step is really simple, to a degree that even if I didn't give you visuals you would understand, but I will still be nice enough to do that. I'm just that great of a person. Essentially, I use PIL or Pillow, which is Python's image library. Yeah, library, that's it. And using it, I look through every single pixel of the image, and I give each one of them either a white value or a black value. But how do I do that? Well, every pixel has 3 color values. How much of green is in the pixel, how much of red is in the pixel, and how much of blue is in the pixel. Values go from 0 to 255, 255 being the maximum. You can mix these colors to create different colors, and essentially by adding all of their values together and then dividing it by 3, you get the average light level of each one of the colors that is within that one pixel. So, by adding them up and dividing it by 3, you get the average light level of that pixel. Once you get the light level of the pixel, what determines whether it will be classified as black or white is whether or not it passes the 128 threshold. Anything below 128 light level will be considered black, and anything above it will be considered white. So now that we have successfully turned an image into a 2-dimensional Python list, what problems were there with this step? Well, the thing is, everything that I've just explained up until now is inside of the bot, but all the things that I'm about to explain right now are no longer in the bot, as I scrap them later on. But I still want to talk about them. The reason I want to talk about them is because the way that I do this is incredibly problematic. For example, here is an image. In this image, the OCR is way too light. Each one of the gray pixels will be deemed under 128, therefore this entire image will actually be seen as completely white. You can easily combat this by adding up all the light levels of every single pixel and then dividing the number that you've just gotten by the number of pixels that are present in the image. Then you can use that number to replace the 128 threshold. So now what's the problem with that? Well, here's an image where the black border that is around the image actually brings the average light level down so much so that everything in the middle of it is deemed completely white. And that was also easily fixable, though it took me significantly longer to figure that out. I think it took me an entire day. The way that I initially fixed it was by dividing the image into a bunch of regions and giving each one of the regions their own average light level. That fixed it insanely well. But as I've said, I've scrapped these things in favor of efficiency and some other things that will probably come around a little later on. Okay, so here's where it gets funny. The second step is legit just making the bot do the thing. Since OCRs are like so self-explanatory, I've gathered that there aren't all that many steps to making them, and don't get me wrong, they're incredibly difficult to make, but what more steps do you expect there to be? It sees it and it reads it. But of course, the most struggling and most all-nighters and the most amount of absolute abhorrent pain came from the second step. It took about 2 to 3 days to think of the first idea of how this would happen, and it was terrible. The first idea that I came up with was absolutely terrible, but I thought I was a genius when I thought of it. The first idea that I had, and I will bring a visual here because it's significantly hard to understand, it would first take the first row of an object that it had yet not checked. After this, it would dive into a library of images that it had, and it would compare them to every single one of them. But the thing is, the shapes that you're comparing to, the characters that you're comparing to, can be significantly bigger than the images that you have in the library. Because of this, I had my bot take from the image the first row of any given object, and then the first row from the images in its library as well, comparing how big the object in the image is, and resizing the image from the library accordingly. And then the image that matched the object in the image the best would be the one that was picked. I hope you're still following. That was pretty hard to code, but then I realized something terrible. That the general idea was terrible. But Matt, you're a genius. This is a brilliant idea. How did it fail? Well, young, naive viewer, it failed because when characters and or shapes or whatever else are resized ridiculously, just checking the first row isn't enough to determine how much it has resized. Here's an example. Here's a small circle. Here's a massive circle. This circle, let's say, will be 100 times bigger than the small one. However, now let's look at how many pixels the first row of both of these images have. Now, I don't know what images you're looking at right now, I haven't made them yet, but I will put it up on screen. You might have noticed that how much the image has resized is not proportional to how many pixels it has grown by on the first row. So taking this absolutely humiliating defeat, ignoring some other problems that also had, I won't even get into, it took me days, and it's very embarrassing to say this, it took me, how many days? A whole week, perhaps, to think of the next strategy, which is the one that I stuck with, but it shouldn't have taken me so long. So I imagine that first row technique that I just explained to you, and just scale it up to entire objects. Just look at the entire object. That way you can actually tell how much it has resized by. So then I coded a cute little algorithm for the bot to be able to locate every object, because there are a lot of objects. There could be a lot of objects in the image, because text has a lot of characters, and then with all the objects located, the width and the height of the objects would be checked, and then they would be compared to resized versions of images from the bot's library. And woohoo, it worked decently. And before we move on from this, I must say I absolutely love, and it's like one of the best things that are ever written, the way that my bot finds the objects. It goes through the entire image only once, and it finds every object and every pixel that is linked to each other. Like, it knows what pixels are linked, and that's awesome. But enough of that. Let's actually talk about the next step. And by the next step, I mean just polishing things. Essentially, by then, the whole logic had been coded. Though, I don't think it's really worth going over this part, because it's just a bunch of boring, and I mean incredibly boring things. But by the end of all that polishing, I had a beautiful, beautiful child that I had made with just code. A child that, unlike a fetus, could actually read. But it was very poor. The bot still remains pretty terrible to this day, and frankly, if you want an OCR in your project, probably don't use mine. Unless you use mine and you really like it and it works really well. It's really, and I mean really, up to you. After polishing it up, I gave it tons of filters that even you could mess around with, because that thing comes with a manual. Go down in the description, you can get it from a GitHub repository, and even if you don't know how to code, I think the manual is going to be so good that you can still use it. Like, no matter how ass you are at it, no matter how ass you are at anything involved in this, you can still use it because the manual is very, very good. And if you're gonna use it for a project or something, even if you're just fucking around with it, look at the filters. Like, learn a lot about the filters, because without the filters, just throwing it in raw, it will not reap the results that you want it to reap, believe me. Another thing that is really important to note is that if you're going to make your own OCR, do not follow in my footsteps. The way that I made my OCR is incredibly, and I mean incredibly, flawed. How most OCRs work is probably by grabbing strokes rather than entire objects, and then seeing what those strokes form. But that's a lot more complicated, and I didn't feel like working that much on something right now, and maybe in the future. Maybe in about an year, I will return to this and I will make an OCR that is significantly better. And now for the next section of the video, to prove my previous statement, I will let people who have never, and I mean never, interacted with code in their entire life, fuck around with this and see how well they can figure things out. Matt, why do you look like you haven't showered in 4 days? First of all, rude. And the reason is because I haven't showered in 4 days. You see, when I work on videos and I get really fixated on them, I forget to properly take care of myself. But don't worry, at least I brush my teeth. It's not as white as I wanted it to be, but it's fine. I got a sample size of 2 whole people, so I made 2 people test my OCR out, and well, it didn't go as well as I was expecting it to, but I feel like I should have just given them the OCR and I should have just left them alone with it, because the whole point is people are supposed to understand the manual. It's supposed to be super simple to a degree where even if you've never interacted with code, you can understand it. I helped the first person a ridiculous amount, but they've literally never in their entire life interacted with code, and frankly, if they tried, it would probably take them days to write pretty simple programs if they try to learn it. So I guess the first person that I picked just wasn't ideal. We set a decent amount of things up pretty quickly without trouble, but then we ran into an issue that we simply couldn't figure out. Later on, I realized we set up one of the fonts incorrectly, and that's why the font wasn't working. The second person had never interacted with Python, but they had experience in JavaScript and HTML, so they had a little bit of an easier time. Unfortunately, I don't have any footage of this because they were present with me IRL, and I didn't take any screenshots because I'm a dumb idiot. But that went a lot smoother. I did help them a little bit, but they did most of it on their own. I kind of just pointed them like, hey, read this. But you shouldn't have that problem if you just read the entire thing and reread it a few times whenever you have a problem. It's not super long, and Again, if you've never interacted with Python, I'm telling you, you can still use this thing, even if you just want to fuck around. It may take an hour or two, but hey, it's if you want to fuck around. But yeah, that concludes this part of the video. It was very short, very anticlimactic, just like these things always are. But I hope you enjoyed that. Yeah. Anyways, I'm just a young man with a computer and some knowledge about programming, so don't take this project too seriously. And again, I can't stress it enough, if you're working on a serious project, probably avoid using my OCR. Subscribe, maybe comment. Please boost my engagement because I spend so much time on these videos and I get barely any views because YouTube doesn't like new creators. And just like at the end of every single video, I will now let the interviewers ask me questions. Yes, you in the back. Yes, the problem that you proposed at the beginning of the video isn't actually solved because the OCR that you made is terrible. Care to comment? Guys, my dog just got hit by a car. I have to go, and I'll see you later. Bye.